Okay, so I think we're live. Welcome, everybody, to Earthwalk podcast. Um, we're doing our Christmas Eve podcast, restoring the meaning of Christmas. For some reason, the YouTube always starts echoing me, so I'm not ever sure how to set that up correctly. What did I just do? I thought I... So, for some reason, now it looks like YouTube is stopped, and I'm not sure why. Okay, so I guess we're okay now. Um, one of these days I'm going to have this down. So, yeah, we're talking about restoring the meaning of Christmas today. And what is the big deal about Christmas? For today, this remembrance and the faith that is founded on it is mostly a family and cultural celebration, while its spiritual significance is lost or distorted due to elitism, parochialism, egoism, and commercialization. And again, there's not a condemnation in this, but just a call to see if we can embody more of the love that is being asked of us in this journey. So I want to get in a little to the history, just in the sense that the history of Christianity is really a human history. And, so we have a lot of distortions and problems with, the institution per se. And yet its origin and essence, in my belief, is it's truly divine. So I want to approach it through my personal quest for meaning, purpose, peace, and understanding. So my sense of the meaning of this Advent, I would now say that it represents the incarnation of the Spirit of truth, love, and life, the quote, light of the world, into the material world of duality and suffering. Yeah, I'm bringing in somebody to the program. Hold on one second.
Hello.
Hi, welcome. I'm gonna put you, just on, so I've got speaker and not gallery. I don't know why it's not working because for some reason I need myself to be pinned. Let me see if I can find that. There we go. But I'm glad you're with us. And so this is just a podcast that I do. And if you want to chime in, you're welcome. Usually people just watch this and are not joining me on the Zoom link, but one of these days I would like to have more dialogue. The journey that I've gotten today, you can try and see if you have some questions that may, stimulate some good stuff.
I'm
But
okay as is. If you want, I would mute myself.
okay,
Even I can. If you want, I can turn off the camera.
either way, I mean, it's fine. It might help to mute and if you do have a question, I think it would be good to chime in because um, I think that it's good to have those kinds of interactions as well. If we can, I'll just have to monitor our time with that.
My
Okay,
house is very quiet. You wouldn't hear any noise. So I
okay,
leave it open just in case that I want to ask something. First, I will raise my hand and then
okay, very good. So I don't know if you caught the first part. We're doing a little program on the meaning of Christmas and my understanding. And, in today's multicultural, sphere, I have some stories about how I understand this faith from a very different perspective, I think, than many other people do.
I want to get to know what you are doing so that I can join more.
Okay. So I'm approaching my understanding of the meaning of Christmas through my personal quest for meaning, purpose, peace, and understanding, right? Like long time I've sought that in the world and in life, and what is the best way to live the most fulfilled and complete life, given that it's sort of a one-shot deal, right? And not that I don't believe in reincarnation, but there is a way in which this life is a unique life, a one and only life. And so there is a quest for me in this life. And part of that quest, I think, is embodied in this understanding of the incarnation of uh, love into the world on Christmas. So, again, what is the meaning of this Advent? I think I would now say that it represents the incarnation of the Spirit of truth, love, and life, which, the light of the world is the phrase that's been used in the Bible, into our material world of suffering and duality. An avatar of the divine, not the only avatar that's ever come to the earth in my understanding, but a very powerful avatar, a very important avatar of the divine, came to guide humanity at this time to a greater understanding of who we really are. And this day represents then the birth of this light on earth through an avatar known as Yeshua ben Joseph. And we call that Jesus, and often Jesus the Christ. The Christ, I believe, is the term of, embodiment of this light. That it is a state of consciousness that, Jesus embodied and that we can all arrive at. So it's symbolically celebrated at this time of year. Not so much because I don't know, maybe Jesus was actually born in December, but I don't know that. But I think it's interesting because at this time of year there is this influx of light that comes into the earth. And so I would just say, tune in. Do you feel it? We often, refer to it as the spirit of Christmas. There's also the solstice celebration that we have, and many celebrations. I think the ancient Roman feast of Saturnalia, like there was something about this time of the year that we feel intuitively. And so that, is a way that I think is like it's not just a holiday of belief, but that again we can embody, or we can actually have gnosis of this thing if we are tuning into it. So I'm going to go back a little ways. I can remember going to the Presbyterian Church in Cody, Wyoming, about 1957, about 7 years old, 6 years old. And they taught me that this light that was coming into the earth at this time, that incarnated in the past as this man Jesus, was love, was the incarnation. Truth is love, as well. So, there's a kind of, but the foundation really to me was love. And as a child, that, we understand love more than light. We're more heart centered than in our consciousness fully. And so, I understood deeply and I knew the truth of that. But I couldn't figure out at all how to be that love when I didn't feel so loving, which was quite a bit at the time. So for me, it was a struggle because I felt like a failure. It became just another impossible bar. And I had no way to, sort of activate it through will. It seemed totally beyond willpower to, be love. And Pathwork Guide helped me a lot there because he was just saying, that love is a soul movement, and it's really not a commandment. It's a commandment to the sense that, we want to embody it, but we can't use our will to do that. What we have to do is open to the soul movement of love. And that usually involves removing what's in the way of love. So the reality that I understand it is that we are all the incarnation of love, and that we've been lost to that understanding and to that connection with our inner essence in this three-dimensional kind of world where we've gotten confused about who we really are. So I knew that there was that truth, like I said, but I just I didn't know how I could possibly measure up and be that. So I felt inside of myself, that this was the answer. But then I also felt inside of myself the places that were not loving. And I didn't find in the church any answers to what you do with that. You could be punished, or you could, try your willpower, or, lots of things like that, but it just never seemed to really be the answer. So I think I found some of that answer as I, found the path work, which was a path of transformation and purification, of the ego and the smaller conscious self. And it was helping me a lot to understand that my essence was love, but that essence was kind of covered up by fears and other things that I accumulated in my journeys on earth. And so the journey back to love was really about removing those blocks and those ways that the heart had hardened and love was not accessible. So that was the direction. It still wasn't quite a whole way. And, it's taken a lifetime. And I think in general, that's what it takes to, accomplish or move, advance in this path of love. So, again, in most churches, there just isn't a lot about how to fulfill the commandment of love. And if it's a soul movement, I think, again, we have to remove the barriers within us to that movement that's already natural. And then, so in the church, they elevate that love, and put it, only as accessible to this unique individual called the only Son of God. And they, put that being up on a pedestal and, think that all they have to do is believe in that love, and it's true that if you truly believe in that love, you might awaken your own love. But that's the other element of it. It's not that we were to worship Jesus, we were to follow him. And so our inner conscience, does actually call us to love. But our self-interest and fear often overrides this. And there's a way in what when we need to awaken to become the love that Yeshua demonstrated. It's this inner conscience which is already in us. It's the Christ in us. But again, it's difficult because we kind of get lost in this impossibility of following, this act of love in our egocentric state of being. So I always intuitively knew, that love was the answer and the way, but it wasn't until I found the pathwork and the Santo Daime that I found a way to transform the darkness and activate my inner light. So the Santo Daime is a Brazilian path that uses an entheogen version of ayahuasca. It's the same as ayahuasca, but it's got a different doctrine that is infused into the drink, so that the love that is naturally there is harnessed in this path. So that really helped as well to kind of allow me to have a direct experience of this. But the pathwork was very profound in that it gave me a way to transform the darkness. And so, it's kind of like activating the light with the daime and transforming the darkness with the pathwork. So the pathwork helped me to learn the work of self-examination, and the daime, which is a new syncretic Christian sect out of Brazil with an entheogen sacrament, showed me self-love for my real nature, compassion and forgiveness towards the imperfection that remain. And my life showed me that the only real way is the way of love and the path of one. So this is very vast in its history and in its psychology, right? The teachings of life proceed to me as we're able to understand them. And so exposing the shadow so it can be transformed and integrated is one level, and then activating the sacred heart that already is in each of us. That's the second part. So this loving heart is the center of our true being, and it is united with the one loving presence, this one loving presence here, right? I love that phrase. I just recently ran across it on another podcast, and I'm using it as a kind of mantra. One loving presence here, right? So the one loving presence here, and it invokes that loving presence within my own heart, and it reminds me that that is what I am. And so it is within and all around us. And if we can awaken to this truth at a deep level of our being, we will be able to truly live the inner doctrine of Christianity, which is, to incarnate the love that is the truth, that is the way. And this love is the answer to everything. We don't always see that in our separate selves, but hopefully the time is coming where some grace will take us to a deeper understanding of that. So let me tell you how I got here. As I said, something in me as a child recognized the true doctrine of love, but over the years, I had a lot of disillusionment about this from traditional churches. And what I've learned since is that Christianity that most of us practice or have left, what I actually call churchianity, is not really based on Jesus' teachings. Most of the churches emphasize the teachings of the Apostle Paul and sort of do not really focus or teach the red letter words of the avatar of this faith, which I find interesting. But I also realize, those words are very, very difficult. We have, a place where, like, yeah, how can we love when we don't know how to love, right? And so we have to kind of shift the focus and make it just this other person instead of a call to each of us. So even as a child, I knew something was off in the doctrine, especially in the doctrine of hell, the doctrine that if you weren't a Christian, you were not saved. None of this sounded like a doctrine of love to me. It sounded like a doctrine of ego dominance and control. And so the more I looked at the history of the church and its presence in the world today, the more I drifted away from the institution. I was a seeker at a very young age, and I was reading about other religions and human psychology by age 13. I remember getting a book by Joseph Campbell on myths of the world, and I began to see the wisdom teachings show up in all the faiths. At the heart of each one was the same doctrine of love. And in the practice of each one, there was similar distortions. And I began to realize that all avatars brought us the truth. But the people who followed them often misinterpreted and misrepresented and couldn't really live up to, understand fully. And so it became diluted and infused with human ignorance in a lot of ways. So it stopped being a practice of love and started being a practice of laws for the most part. And if you read the story of Yeshua, his challenge to that tendency in the Judaism of his time is what actually got him crucified. He was trying to, present this new uh, spirit of love into the understanding of this faith. And he wasn't trying to create a Christianity. He was really challenging, the Jewish authorities at the time in their interpretation of the Jewish tradition. And so, his challenging of them eventually, is what got him crucified. And in today's world, the same thing, it's like we're all sort of law-bound in some ways, or we don't fully recognize this heart-centered thing. It's an intellectual approach, or, a kind of faith. Um, and the heart has a space of faith, for sure. Um, the space of the heart, in my understanding, is, formed with calm, compassion, faith, and surrender. And that is what allows us, and we have to bring all of the lower self chakra, orientations up into that channel, and then we can navigate in a more whole way. But the truth is that, the doctrine as it was brought in by all of the avatars is really too much for most people, and is a big challenge for the egocentricity that most humans naturally have. So the truth is, man cannot achieve this alone by active will. Yeshua's teachings, as all the great faiths, were pointing to something even greater, an inheritance in the human soul that already existed but needed to be activated. And so if you miss this thread, and then you're confused, because if love is the answer, then what do we do? What do we do when we do not feel love? What do we do when we are in fear, pain, and separation, right? Like then we're lost in sin, and then, are we condemned? Do we condemn ourselves? I think that there's a way in which the answer lies in these teachings of Christianity, the true teachings of Jesus. But they're not so easy to find. And humanity is, we have to be humble in our nature, which is still, based in a lot of egoism and fear and separation. So churchianity mostly answered this question of what do we do when we don't feel love by saying that it wasn't about doing anything. It was not by works, but by faith that we are saved. And that all we needed to do was to believe that Yeshua was the one and only true Son of God. And yet, I'll repeat, Jesus did not say, believe in me. He did say, follow me. And yet that is a huge reach for most of us. Knowing we do not feel such love, and not knowing how to activate love, we feel defeated. We give up. It's too big. We can't, it's not even possible to try. Or maybe we do try, but we fail, and then we judge ourselves for falling short. And so these are two ways that we get lost on this path of love. The word sin actually means missing the mark. That's the mark of love. So we've missed the mark of being this love. And we were not perfectly loving, so we were sinning. But the sin was not condemned, really. It was understood as the nature of the human. And so this is also where the poison doctrine of original sin kind of was created, because we sort of see that, we all have this flaw within us of not being able to love. But there is also the distortion. It is true that we are humans and naturally selfish. And yet love can overcome that selfishness. Love can bring us into the one body of Christ. That was the original plan of salvation. And separation can be healed through forgiveness, which is love. So when we judge ourselves or each other, we are naturally going into separation. And separation is the opposite of love. Love is the energy of embracing, of one, of unifying, of realizing that at the heart of everything, we are all part of this one universal consciousness. We are expressed in many forms, in many beings, in many ways, many places, universally. And yet all of it, at its source and center, is fundamentally this love, which is truth. So in many ways, it's very simple. But since the imperative to love cannot be created by an outer act of will, and all kinds of material things activate our fears, which drown out our faith in love, we really can't obey this one commandment. And so we try to fudge the doctrine. I think the Apostle Paul was the first to bring this heresy, and we have to remember that he never knew Yeshua. Now, I can certainly believe that Christ appeared to him on the road to Damascus, and that his zealous faith was real. But his teachings, like many channels of spiritual teachings, were interpreted through Paul's cultural heritage and human misconceptions. I think it is a challenge of all great mediums and shamans to distill the light of truth from the confusing temptations of the shadow and the limitations of our understanding. So as we advance spiritually and awaken more and more spiritually, it's always, more and more of a temptation to consider that we, have the answers, that we understand it fully. And yet, oftentimes we have our lenses that don't truly translate what, we're trying to understand. So love and service, basically, are going to create the paradise we long for. But each of us must realize this, each one on our own. And for the ego, this kind of life sounds like slavery, sounds like death, sounds like, limitation of freedom. And free will is critical, is absolutely necessary to the plan of salvation. So no one can be forced to choose love. It's not possible. Love has to be forged in the cauldron of experience, and through this our love will increase if we realize the purpose of this cauldron and understand the undergoing that we're encountering and the painful patterns of experience we seem to repeat in our lives are all benign teachers, mirrors for us to see more clearly and adjust accordingly. Quoting a line from a prayer received by Donovan Thasinga, one of my teachers in the Pathwork and who also led me to the Santo Daime, even though we fall at times into error and darkness and despair, all this is meant to aid us in our increase of wisdom, faith, and love. I think I'll read that whole prayer. It's very beautiful. It says, Divine source of love and light, we honor our oneness with you. Blessed by your love, we take refuge and joy in the constancy of your presence. Those of us that can begin to feel that. We trust that in you our true needs are always met and our deepest desires always fulfilled. We recognize that all our fears are a rebellion against true faith in you. We know that even though we fall at times into error and darkness and despair, all this is meant to aid us in our increase of wisdom, faith, and love. With full awareness and compassion for human pain and sorrow, we affirm our perfect faith in your wisdom and love. With full awareness of our human limitations, we know that in our deepest nature, we are always one with you. So it's like in the uncovering of this deeper layer of our nature that I think we can, place the rest of our being, our ego, and all of those kinds of things uh, into proper balance in life. And the ego will actually discover that this path of love and service is the path of its greatest fulfillment. When we can channel this love of the divine through us, when it, takes the form of ourselves in some unique way, and yet we know it's really beyond us. It's not something that we can generate. Then it allows uh, ourselves to kind of lean back and access something greater than our small egoic self. Maybe it's the capital S self that Jung spoke of. So the psyche or the soul, seems to be in a school here on Earth. And through its experiences, it learns to choose what is true and what is not. And this takes many lifetimes. And we don't always see it, in our time here on Earth. But I believe that is a part of an after-death experience called a life review that allows us to deeply explore all our choices and, what happened in the journey, where love existed and, what was the result of that, and where love and why love was absent in certain places and what was the result of that. And over lifetimes, we grow in our capacity for love. So if you yourself have any inclination toward loving, know that that has been developed, that you are a soul on this path of Christ, and that you have, learned. It's not, it's to access this part of you, and it is awakened to some degree in you. And of course, we all are deepening that, trying to awaken more, trying to remember and access this deeper, capacity within us. And that will ultimately lead again to our greatest joy and happiness. So I've realized that every event I have gone through in my life has been part of this unseen shaping and this slow transformation, teaching me, it seems like very gradually, like the ego is very impatient. We want to be fixed now, which is not quite the same thing as learning how to love fully. But that's our confusion. And so this slow transformation has to teach me to trust in the nature of life and to transform me very individually, personally, intimately, teaching me patience because the old traumas and defenses are deeply programmed in us and we can't transform them overnight. And teaching me also this deeper dedication to the very love of everything that is. Again, the law of one. There is nothing that we need to withhold love from on this earth sphere. It seems hard to realize, hard to understand, impossible to realize, and I cannot say that I have accomplished that. But that's my task, that's my work, is to meet whatever is and see if it's possible to open my heart to that. And having an open heart doesn't mean never having other feelings. One of our issues that we have is that we don't know how to honor grief. And we live in the field of time where, everything is lost and changes, and so we have to learn how to undergo this process, which is a process that includes loving what is and then grieving what is lost and then opening our hearts to love again. So even today, I'm working this as I come up against my inner walls to love. And for several years now, I've had an adversarial stance due to some differences of opinion in an organizational setting. And I know these people as colleagues and friends, and yet I find myself opposed to the things they are doing. And I can feel that my body goes into, resistance, and my heart hardens. And I go to fighting and demanding to be heard and demanding that they be different than how they are. So now over time, we've all hardened ourselves to each other. And now the ego says, if they would just change, then I could love again. But the call to love is for us to love what is in every moment. And so the work is there. I don't have the answer. I haven't gotten quite there yet. I'm working on it. Um, but, I do believe that this is the task before us, not to give up on love, but to continually, deepen our seeking and our questioning of everything in this life and how it connects with this answer of love. So if the ego says, that you could love them if they change, it's like, then it seems like, we are, sort of caught in this duality, right? Into, being helpless in a way. We have to wait on something else outside of our control. And not even that we have control over our own love, but, we don't have any control over other people. So we want to sort of learn how to work with this, work with our resistance, work with the truth that's deep inside. Usually it's a projection, usually our resistance comes from trauma, from old wounds, from, history, even past life history. And so it's necessary for us to feel that block and then work with that block, right? Realizing that it's not the nature of ourself. That block is just something that we've inherited through experience that is really not useful, but we didn't know anything better at the time. And so in order to survive, we created, this block. And now it's time to remove the block and to seek within our very own being how to begin to do that. And to look, there are many paths, many ways that are offered. I found for me the most important one at this point in my journey is actually, again, to embrace it all, to integrate it all, to, like allow the parts of me that are not loving, to acknowledge them, to not separate myself or judge them or, criticize myself in that, but to deeply understand them, understand myself, and it seems like in that very moment and movement, my heart opens again. And, I'm generous in the way of understanding my own limitations. I can understand, others' fears and distortions and also forgive them. Sometimes my struggle is like wanting them to wake up too. So I'm still working on loving them. And it's only, I love people, who are not awoken completely. And I use this term not in the political sense of woke, but in the spiritual sense of awakened. Um, that it really is a kind of presence, that we eventually arrive at through a huge process of transformation and initiation, and that it is what life is about, to take us on this journey of initiation. One of my poems says, "Remember, my brothers and sisters, we're not here for a vacation. The difficulties that arise are here for our edification." So edification means to build ourselves up, to clarify, to understand, right? And so, everything that is here is really a form of love, even though it doesn't always seem like love. And if we can learn to, not close ourselves off completely, even though we may sort of automatically, habitually, but to then turn around and say, "Oh, I notice." And is that really the truth? Is that really what's needed? Is that really the best way here? And to see, can I open my heart? Can I open my heart one more time, even to this? And again, it's no simple, easy. I mean, it's simple and easy, but it's no. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. It's like it's not easy. I guess it's simple. It's an incredibly challenging, difficult path that does take us lifetimes, and yet the time that it takes is to ensure a very deep and thorough, way of purification, a very deep and thorough understanding. And so it's like we're little baby consciousnesses, and we're growing into recognizing that in our deepest nature we are divine and one with God. And it takes a while to get there. So again, we have to be forgiving. We have to be completely, sort of accepting of where we are in our imperfections in each moment, and yet not losing sight of the truth, the goal, the longing, and the understanding that we came here to learn to be more loving, to love more. So Jesus, as I said, didn't say to worship him. He asked us to follow him. But he also realized how difficult that is. And he knows who we really are. Our highest nature is one with his.
Sorry,
And one with the ultimate source of all. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Maze. What did you say?
I'm sorry, you said our highest source is what?
Our higher self is one with the light of Christ. That in essence, Christ consciousness, is throughout the entire universe. Even nature embodies the Christ. And the human being, even more so, has this, beautiful potential, the highest potential of love. So as we awaken to that nature and embody it, then we can really transform the world, right? If you could imagine, many people all activating their love in the fullest sense that Jesus did, we would have a very different world. And it's, according to this understanding, that is who we are, our inner essence. What we are originally made of is that divine substance, is that divine consciousness. And it is our essential nature, and it is, sort of occluded in us, covered up, clouded over. The Pathwork Guide, talks about the accumulated God-opposed layers, and he takes it back to the allegory of the fall of the angels, and the rebellion of Lucifer. And it's a very interesting story that I may share sometime on this podcast. But, we, for whatever reason, became separated and alienated. And in that separation and alienation, we had to create defenses. We felt like we had to survive against enemies and, the challenges of, you know, life on Earth, you know, the basic needs of food and shelter and, those kinds of things cause struggle and fear and strife in humanity. And so, we, in that understanding of the earth as being a kind of place where both the light and the darkness exist. And it's here that then, as we work with, the differences between them and explore them through our free will, that we gradually learn the truth of the light and the preference for the light. Then we end up, being in a process of purification and letting go of, like understanding really, where that darkness comes from and realizing the error in the thinking of it. And then all of a sudden, it's transforming itself. And it is this kind of path of transformation that I lost, like when I was first in Christianity. You would think, well, if the commandment, is to love, then they would help you understand how you would do that if you're not loving. And that to me is the path of transformation that can help us. Again, it's not an act of will. I can't make my heart open up when my heart, is frozen in fear or, trauma or something like that. Judgment and frustration, all of these negative places, like it blocks the flow of the light and the love. So when I'm, in those states, it's not an act of outer will that can restore me to love. Something else has to happen. And that something else is elusive to me still in many ways. And yet I know it's there. And so whatever the situation is, I kind of just persistently keep questioning it and asking and seeking, what will it take? How can I do this? How can I transform this defense, this resistance, this anger, this, frustration back into love? And like I said, a lot of the answer to that, I think I found in this understanding that at least the best approach is to forgive, to accept, to embrace, to unify, right? Uh, to acknowledge and bring into wholeness. And then somehow when that happens, change naturally happens. I think that again, the wholeness of Christ, the love of Christ, is to also embrace everything in us, to forgive everything in us. And then when we can, do that for ourselves as well, our hearts can naturally open. So the work of cleansing what is not love is a creative individual process. And I'm grateful that I found the Pathwork in 1984, which taught, the way of transformation, and the Santo Daime in 1997 that allowed me to realize all this at an even deeper level of direct experience and gnosis. So there's a Santo Daime hymn that embodies this to some degree, that many do, but this one came up in my mind. It says, to love and to have love, one needs to understand. God is in your heart. God is your wisdom. To love and to have love, one needs to comprehend. To love all beings as you love yourself. Those who love know how to love. They are beacons of light. Those who love all beings love my Jesus. So this last line says to me that you don't have to, be a Christian. You just need to love. And that whoever is embodying this love is probably more of a true Christian no matter what faith or doctrine they follow. So you know who you are. We have this sense that we want to love anyway. And again, even in this beautiful hymn, I don't see, the answer to how you find love. It says those who love know how to love, right? And there's a certain truth to that. And yet, many times that love is blocked. And what we don't know is, I think, how to restore our active nature of love. But when we do, we are beacons of light. And the last line, like I said, is just a matter of, sort of universalism. I would like to remove the, Christian religion. I don't think Jesus ever meant to form a religion. I think he wanted to simply embody a teaching and demonstrate for us a way. So we're still, working on learning to listen and understand and follow that way. But most of us do have a deep desire to love, even if we've given up, even if we've been so hurt that all we know is hatred. Deep in the heart of every person is the longing and the core of this divine essence of love. So I want to read a few of the transmissions of the guide on this influx of light at this time, and we're almost time to close. So it says, greetings in the name of God and Jesus. I bring you blessings, my dear ones, very special blessings tonight. At this time of the year, the strong forces of love, coming from the King of the universe, touch all spheres. Whoever is open and in a state of quiet harmony can receive this force that is a blessing for your body, your soul, and your spirit. It is often so difficult for this force to penetrate into your soul. However, its golden ray must rebound if your emanation is not harmonious. In other words, if we have not a harmonious inner place, then we really can't receive it very well. I don't know that it rebounds totally. My experience is really that we can get and take in some of that. Sorry, I've had a cold and I think I'm getting to the end of my voice here.
It's almost time anyway.
Mm-hmm. So let me see if I can finish these quotes from the Pathwork Guide and we'll close up. So, it is often so difficult for this force to penetrate your soul, however. Its golden ray must rebound if your emanation is not harmonious. You close yourself against it whenever you are resentful, angry, and hurt. Mostly these feelings are so superfluous, so unfounded, you know that the remedy is not to push these feelings aside as though they did not exist, but rather to take them out into the open and ask God, ask Christ, to show you where the root is in yourself, where you have built the wall that stands between you and the blessing forces. They are waiting to regenerate you with a very lasting effect. So you can really feel that. These forces that are an influx of light at this time of year that we mentioned before are, and it's always coming to Earth for us as well, they're waiting to regenerate us with a very lasting effect. Let them flow into you, my dear ones. If you are angry at your brother and sister, try to understand both yourself and the other. Do not be more severe with the other than you are with yourself, or more severe with yourself than you are with the other, which many times we can do. And that, alas, happens to the best of us. Try to strengthen your love, understanding, and forgiveness, so as to be able to partake of this wonderful spiritual nourishment. It could fill your heart and every particle of your soul, cleansing it of all impurities forever. So this is part of what is in the Santo Daime, is this force that comes, and it is this light that, is ongoing and purifying in it. The Daime is basically a way of opening ourselves. And in the Daime, it's not like we still have to, work through these blocks and our own resistance to receiving this light. But it allows us, in a way, supports us in doing that. That feels, like a different level that it can work within our being. So it helped me. It's not for everybody, but for me, it was the right path. So this is another quote, again, about the same thing. At this time in your realm of consciousness, you celebrate a symbolic event. You celebrate the Christ consciousness, or the divine consciousness deep within your own being. Most human beings live a lifetime, nay, many lifetimes, without ever knowing that there is something within that surpasses the ordinary consciousness. This extraordinary consciousness, the sublime consciousness, must be awakened within the course of the evolutionary journey of each entity. Here on this path, you are learning to eliminate the obstructions and the obstacles. At this particular time, when the birth of Christ consciousness is celebrated, we shall talk about the event as it begins to take place. Of course, my dearest friends, you do know that this does not happen at once. It happens gradually, again and again. It occurs, is lost, reoccurs, and so on. And so, we're talking about this advent of the birth of Christ as an ongoing event into the planet. And I believe that, even though contrary to experience and common sense these days, there's so much separation and division on the planet right now, that is actually a sign of the increase of the light that is bringing all the shadows out of the darkness, so that we have to, experience and decide what we'll do with that. Um, and, we can no longer kind of deny or hide or have pretense about all of this. It's kind of here in our face. And it's time for us to make a choice. So here on this Christmas of 2025, it's a very powerful Advent season. And I hope that people can open themselves as much as possible. He goes on there in a beautiful kind of metaphor. He says, perhaps you can see the tree that you light as a symbol. Many, many candles have to be lit and be aflame within you to bring the total consciousness to its eternal glow on the outer level of your manifest existence. Each recognition, each insight, each honest admission, each shedding of a partial mask, each breaking through of a defense, each step of courage and honesty, where you take responsibility for your negativity, is a lighting of yet another candle. You bring light into your soul by bringing truth into your darkness. But as long as you project your darkness outward in order not to face your own shadows, you cannot light the candles. The great lighting of the whole tree, the tree of life, is an ongoing process. And the more candles are lit, the greater the joyousness and the glory become. With great joy, we observe how much more of this glory and this joy you, my dearest friends, are now being able to activate and to stand. In the light of Christ is spreading all over and is also touching this earth sphere. Imbibe of this light, of this wonderful strength, so that you will forever find new stamina for this path of self-finding. That is a joy to all of us. Receive the blessing, be in peace, and be in God. So with that, I want to bless everyone in this powerful season of the influx of the light and the birth of the Christ child in each of our hearts. The birth of love more and more fully. This is the second coming of the Christ, and I believe it's coming sooner than we could imagine. We are on the threshold of a collective awakening, and those who choose this way of love will be the citizens of New Jerusalem and will be guided to live this love within their own journeys if they seek the way. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Same to you. Thank you. Happy holidays.
You too. What what religion are you?
I'm Muslim. I'm a
Muslim.
I'm a
Very good.
progressive
Yeah.
Muslim.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, and many of us are like great variety. So if next time you want to come on and share a little more about your understanding of that in relationship to this,
But
it
to
would be
me, religion is a private thing, and everybody has to follow his or her own path to choose one.
yes, absolutely. But don't you agree that love is at the base of every one of them?
Unity is that debate.
Unity, correct, which is love.
That is why we have one God. Unite. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And the one God is immanent in all things, right? And so essentially, even though we're in the illusion of separation, the truth is ultimate unity.
we are just looking at different angles.
Uh-huh, exactly. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank
And
you. Bye.
bye. Do you have a holiday of this time of year?
Not yet. When it comes Ramadan, there is holiday.
Ramadan. Coming up. Okay.
But the thing is, that calendar is a 360-day calendar,
Right.
so it keeps moving.
It keeps moving around. Yes, I'm aware of that. Even the Hebrew calendar is like that too. It's much more based on the cycles of the moon than the sun and the common calendar. So
Actually, it's
okay.
called moon calendar.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a very, very enjoyable Christmas and holiday. There is something on Saturday, isn't it?
This coming Saturday, um, I think I'm not quite clear that there is. I don't remember in my mind. So
I found out when you have these events,
yeah, on the event calendar. Okay, double check it. I will too.
underneath the event, you say to be announced. And then on the top, very small, you have the date and time. So I found it, and I think there is something going on Saturday from 1 to 4.
Yeah, I think it's actually uh it was last Saturday that was like a singing event. And then on the 28th, which is a Sunday of next week, but I will double check. I sometimes get my
I
own
know,
calendars confused.
no, you're right. I think it was Sunday, and I know I cannot do it Sunday.
Uh-huh.
Another commitment.
Okay.
Thank you. See you sometime.
Yeah. Thank you. You too.